see. Wear my glasses for the live because it has a reflection. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back again with another Facebook Live interview. Guys, I really love Facebook Live interviews. For one reason only. It's a platform that we get to share knowledge without us actually realizing it. And so my guest tonight is no stranger to engaging with people on anything educational, And in fact, I think the only conversation I ever had with him in varsity or back when we were students was when he said, and I'll be running for presidency in the near future. But I didn't imagine that the near future would mean this time in 2023, we'd be having his face added to, the ballot paper as one of the presidential candidates that would have to put an X next to. I'm talking about somebody whose English really intimidates me, but we're going to be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll, all the excitement. We're about to be joined here by David, and he's here. Yay!
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing well. It is good to see you. Thank you kindly for having me. And you're hyping me quite a lot. And sincerely and humbly do appreciate that. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Let me just, one last thing before. One last thing before we get started. I want to be sure I have my dictionary next to me because at any at any moment you can drop a bombastic word. I need to be able to refer.
You make me sound very verbose.
There's even a meme about you, David, where they said when your English data bundles never runs out, you're the face of.
Okay. I haven't seen that one, but I
Oh,
appreciate that.
listen, how are you? I guess I want you to also answer this question by connecting it to how's life since varsity?
I appreciate that. It's a good question. And I believe by saying the following, that I'm well. I am swell. I got a good story to tell, like someone that got up when they fell, because this is indeed something that will ring loud across the world as the most beautiful of bells. And indeed, I think since varsity, the privilege that I've had has been to serve in quite a number of capacities. And for me, one thing that's really big, very near and dear to my heart is servant leadership. Since varsity, I've had the privilege of serving in the Gauteng Youth Sector Parliament as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Minimum Wage. I got the privilege to serve as the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth Youth Parliament. I was the first African ever in this position, overseeing the legislative affairs of young people across 54 countries. I've had the privilege of spending some time working in the World Entrepreneurship Investment Forum as one of the youngest people there, as the ambassador for South Africa to the Unite 2030 initiative, which is UN SDG development, as well as serving within the African Union. So I'm still a student, which surprises quite a lot of people. When I show up on campus, people will be like, "Hey, oh, you came to visit." I said, "No, I got class." So doing my first year PhD now. But life since varsity has been well. And I think it has been well because of the privilege that has allowed me to continue to serve the people of our great country.
Sure. David, your CV already, just your profile, serving in this, serving in that, serving, all of this, you're doing it at what age? Because
I am
trying to... I'm trying to compare here. I'm trying to go, oh, okay, that you would probably do that at the between the ages of and, but here you are just going on and on and on about all of these leadership positions.
Well, I appreciate that. It's one thing that I always emphasize that as young people are more than the future. We are the present. We do not simply sit at the table. We take our own chairs, we bring it at the table, and we make room for young people. I'm currently 26 years old and very proud of the fact that I believe that young people are competent, capable, and able to make a meaningful contribution and a meaningful difference within our new political party. I remember I was having a chat and someone once asked me, Dave, when are we going to start a youth wing? And I said, I fundamentally disagree with the idea of a youth wing because young people should not be relegated to our own corner somewhere. We should be in the room where the decisions are happening and demonstrating that, yes, we have the power, the mandate, the ability, as well as the track record to prove that we can do it.
Dude, I've never actually seen it like that, where, for me, when I speak about young people being in leadership, it's just offer them the opportunity, It's always a thing of find an association that you can assign them to. And already, I can tell that you have it figured out. But again, you've already answered my other question about your age. And so, one other thing that I had to think long and hard about as I was preparing for this interview was that, growing up, when we at least when we started figuring out what it is we wanted to do in life, we threw things like, I want to be president one day when I grow up. And then there's you. There's David Kabwa somewhere. This little boy who grows up in, where did you grow up?
Kamaklala, Temanyane, Limpopo.
Ramatlala, which Ramatlala? Because there's two Ramatlalas. There's Ramatlala by Mlechi side, then there's Ramatlala in I think it's in this Kukuni area. So which one is it?
Yes, indeed.
Is it a village or a township?
I always like to describe it as a bit of both, but I suppose you could classify it as more of a village.
Oh, it's about Spedinyan.
Pichana.
I blame the people you grew up around. 26 years. Yes, but growing up, you've had a dream that you always envisioned yourself in, I would guess. Is it still the same dream, or did it change somewhere, and what caused it to change?
Well, that's a very powerful question, and I'll gratefully and graciously answer that. The dream has always remained the same because the dream has been linked to an objective, and the objective has been to serve. The objective has been to help people. The objective has been to make a meaningful contribution to society. And the way that I wanted to do that initially was through the role of a doctor. My dad is a medical doctor, and he goes out and he saves lives all day. And that's what I envisioned myself doing. I said, what better way to help people than to save lives? So growing up, I had always wanted to be a doctor. It was my passion. It was the dream, and that dream was linked to the objective of, well, I just want to serve, and I genuinely believe that this is the best way that I can serve. So throughout high school and primary and even at home, they used to call me Dr. Dave. They used to say Dr. Cup was my father, called me Dr. Dave. And, it became kind of a running joke, like, oh, okay, well, Dave's going to be a doctor. And I remember throughout high school, I would perform quite well. In high school, man, let me tell you I'm going to tell you right now. in high school, I was, the one of the kids that did everything. I did rugby, I did athletics, I did a bit of soccer, I did drama, I did chess, I did choir. If there was an activity, you name it, I did it, and I did it well. I was a top 10 learner. I was the king of the school. Until today, I still hold the record for the highest amount of votes for the prefect elections in my school. Just it has never been beaten. Um, I used to walk onto school grounds and I would greet everybody. We had about 780 kids in my school. I would greet everyone every day. It was just part of my morning routine. That
Sure.
includes the gardeners and it includes the cleaners. So now I had developed a sense of confidence like, hey, I'm going somewhere, and that place is towards medical school because I will be a doctor who goes on to really shake things up. And again, the objective was to be impactful. So
Yes.
now I come to matric, and in my great and abundant confidence, I apply to university. The only thing I applied for was medicine. Now
Oh,
I get my matric results back, and to my surprise, they're not what I had hoped they would be. So I'm left with two options: either try and fight to get in for a BSc, or go back and upgrade my matric results. And to give you an idea, I did grade 1 twice, I did grade 9 twice, I did matric twice. Never failed anything, but I had repeated 3 grades because I was constantly moving back and forth between different schools, but also different schooling systems. So now I finish and I need to go back to high school. That was the option that I chose. And I'll never forget the day I'm sitting in the classroom and everyone has all of these big expectations. My friends, they're going to university. Their parents are proud. The town is proud. And Dave, who used to be in the town newspaper every couple of weeks, he's just kind of sitting at home wondering, okay, what's this dude going to do with his life? So suddenly I become the guy who peaked in high school. And I hated being that guy. Um, Now, while I'm upgrading my matric results, I get on a bus randomly where I'm being shipped off to who knows where, and the bus stops, and I come out and I found myself at the Gauteng provincial legislature. And I did not even know that provinces had their own parliaments. It was a completely alien concept to me. So I'm put in a corner at the back with someone's little sister in this room with this huge winding table. It's a table that takes up the entire room to allow everyone to discuss. But I technically was not really meant to be there. So I just kind of sat there with someone's little sister, just observing the conversations. And, I asked, well, hey, what is happening here? What is this? So, well, this is the children's sector parliament. And I was like, oh, I began to wonder, am I still a child? And I was an 18-year-old in high school, so technically I was still a child. I was like, oh, okay, well, I just qualified as a child. And I start to observe the conversations that are happening about very robust issues, and my interest becomes very piqued. And I want to participate, but I'm not supposed to be there, so I cannot participate. So they ask for a scribe, and a scribe, you will know if you like to debate, engage, and discuss. Most people don't want to be a scribe because you sit in the corner and take notes. I was like, well, if I can be a scribe, that'll get me a seat at the table. Put my hand up, and I said, I will be your scribe. They have never had a more vocal scribe in the history of that functionality. So
how's it?
now, so it comes time for the election, and I was elected as chairperson in the Children's Parliament for that particular portfolio committee. And I love what we were doing. We were working on policy recommendations that went on to influence about 15,000 children. I was like, okay, well, this is a different way of helping people. So now I start to reevaluate and rethink exactly my approach towards serving. And this was where I became aware of political science as a concept, as a discipline, as a degree. I used to think, well, people who go into politics, they probably just studied law. But I was not really too interested in studying law. So I learned about politics as a degree. And I remember putting it as one of my options. I remember medicine was first, and somewhere along the lines there, I put politics. And I
Sure.
remembered finding out if I want to do politics, it has to be at the University of Pretoria because Pretoria has the highest amounts of embassies and missions, second to New York. And every government department has its headquarters in Pretoria. So I thought, okay, well, someone studying politics, this is definitely the place to be. Um, Long story short, I get accepted, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to do politics. So went the opposite direction of medicine, which people also found quite funny. And this is what has set me on that path. So it began with the realization that there was an alternative way to reach that dream, which was based on the objective of wanting to be impactful and wanting to serve people. And in all honesty, it is a dream that I am still chasing. It is an ambition that I still have, and it is an ambition that is like an ocean because you cannot measure how deep it is. And that is something that I'm always very grateful for.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I like, how you are bringing political science into perspective, especially using your ultimate objective of helping people ultimately. And it's directing us to the main discussion for today, which is you running for presidency next year, right? And what I picked up from what you were saying is that you moved from the medical route of helping people to now the science of politics. Sure.
Right.
Where while you're still pursuing the ultimate objective of helping people. My question, therefore, I guess it's a many-part question, but firstly, just to see and evaluate first, the people that you want to help, David, through your, what do I call it? Do I call it political science background / presidential? Sure. This aspiration of becoming president, how does it factor into your objective of helping people? I guess I want you to answer me by perhaps giving me the demographics of these people that you so have at heart, right? To
Right.
put yourself in the spot, because I'm thinking running for presidency for me is like a huge sport. Like it's like you saying to me right now, tomorrow you're going into the Comrades Marathon. Are you kidding me? Without even preparing me, that's how I view this journey that you're on. Like it's just me. So just answering, maybe if we can first start with the demographics of the people, the people that you are running to help. Who are they? What do they need? And what do they look like? Where have they been? Etc.
Right. I really appreciate that. And again, it's a very good question. And I really wanted, there was like three sub questions in there that I really want to speak to, but let me be respectful to the platform that you've given me and stick to the one question that I've received about the demographics. The demographics that we're looking at are young people, and young people between the ages of 18 and 35. Um,
Mm.
Now, I specify young people, but I also welcome young people who are young at heart, because I think it is important that in an effort to target a demographic that we do not be exclusionary. So although young people are the target, I also welcome any and all South Africans who feel that they might be experiencing disenfranchisement or a lack of representation. And that's my second point on this matter, that representation matters. When we look at our body politic today, the what is evident is that we have become encapsulated within the politics of fear. Most messaging revolves around the following: vote for X to prevent Y from happening. Not vote for X because you believe in X, vote for X because if you do not vote for X, you will end up with Y. And my question then becomes, well, why is it that the only motivational mechanism that is in place is to propagate a sense of fear, disconcertment, and discouragement? I believe that we need to reintroduce the politics of hope into South Africa. And I believe that this is where we will start to see young people who are disenfranchised and who do not feel represented going out to make their voices heard. Most young people who are signing up to vote within MOVE, and MOVE is the name of the newly established political movement. You can call
Yeah.
it a party. I like to call it a movement. Now, most of these young people are people who said, well, you know what, Dave, if MOVE was not there, I would not have had a reason to vote. I would not have had an alternative to vote. I would not have had a platform that I feel adequately represents me. And this is why it is the demographic that I am targeting. I think it is important that what we have is leadership that is willing to put our ideas on the national agenda, and particularly the ideas of young people. And I want to be the conduit. I want to be the vessel. I want to be the platform that young people can use to ensure that, well, their voices are heard. Now, it takes a very long process to um, affect and implement legislation, but the very first step is to make sure that we're having the conversations that young people want to be having. For example, one thing that you don't hear often in South African media is the influence and effect of substance abuse. And in that, I include drug abuse and alcohol abuse. Yet, with most of the young people and communities that I engage, it's just something that keeps coming up. I even hear that more than I hear about youth unemployment, which for me was a very, very surprising revelation. And not to say that there is one issue that is a higher priority than the other. These are very important issues, but it's important that there is a voice to make sure that all these issues are heard. And this is why young people are my target demographic, and it's why I'm so passionate about young people, because we have the propensity and the ability to make change. If you look at what happened in Thailand recently, they have a new political party that was formed that was able to win about 300 seats. It was a very large majority in their lower house of parliament. And quite literally, it was because the youth stood up and said, okay, well, we have a place where finally our voice can be heard. They decided to turn up to go and vote. And this is what we need in this country. So I simply want to be the vessel for young people to make their voices heard.
Sure, I hear you. Quite an interesting answer. Speaking about your political party or your new political party, I remember that when you ran for SRC president at your previous university, you ran independently, correct?
Yes.
Is it not possible to run in the national elections independently?
Yes, it is. And I love that you bring this up because that's actually how the party was formulated.
Yeah,
Now, at the time, I was in the process of getting the signatures required to register as an independent.
sure.
Now, in South Africa, we have a new law. At the time, it was called the Electoral Amendment Bill, which came from a ruling from the Constitutional Court that allowed independents to contest for the first time. And this bill had four problems, and I'm going to highlight them very briefly. The
Yeah.
first problem is that the votes of an independent are redistributed. It means that if you need, let's say, 10,000 votes to get one seat in parliament, and as an independent, you get 20,000 votes, those extra 10,000 votes get redistributed, meaning they will go to other political parties or other independents. This means that you might have voted for one person, and your vote for that one person puts someone else in power, which doesn't make sense in a democracy, in my opinion. It's highly problematic. The second is the threshold criteria. There are political parties who were registered with as little as 500 votes. Yet, now as a newly registered party and as independent, so if you are a newly registered party, it means you don't have any seats anywhere. And if you are an independent, it also means you don't have seats anywhere. So now the requirement for both is that you need thousands of signatures. That's why any post that you see that I'm putting out, I'm like, hey, if you agree with what I'm saying, make sure that you sign up. Check out www.move-za.com to sign up. Because we need upwards of about 15,000 signatures, and that just doesn't make sense. How are there parties that exist that got about 500 signatures? Prior to that, you needed about 1,000 signatures in order to register. Now it's bumped up to about 15,000. That's the second major issue. The third major issue is that there is no kind of recall mechanism. I think it's important to have avenues for accountability. So now, if you are elected as an independent, let's say the unfortunate happens and you die in office, What happens is the PR system is used, there is a recalculation, and either the seat is reallocated to another party or it goes to the next percentage aggregate on the ballot, meaning it might go to another independent or another political party. So there is no real mechanism that exists. And the fourth major issue is that independents are made to pay way too much in order to register. So to give you an idea, so my political party, the new one, Move, it is registered, full credentials, certificates from the IEC, all of that is in order, but I still need to pay 300,000 rand just to get on the ballot, which is the same thing I would need to do as an independent. So in short and in summary, when I found out all of this information, I went back to a lot of the people I was getting signatures from, and I asked, okay, there's a chance that if you vote for me, your vote will not go to me. Would you still vote? And most people said, no, Dave, if that's the case, you will not vote, which is one of the reasons why I decided to start a party to ensure that any votes we get are votes that we keep, to motivate individuals to keep voting, to go to the ballot box, to make their voices heard. So again, the objective and the mission hasn't changed. The vehicle to get there has simply been updated. There's also the reason why I decided to start. That's another question that I get. Like, Dave, there are so many political parties. Why go and start another one? And that's
Yes.
because the idea. I'm sure. Okay, well, I'll pause for now. I don't know if that might be another question that you have. I do want to speak to that, but that's one of the reasons why we registered Move, because the thought of still just being accountable to people and not to any other larger structure has always been the objective. And I'll park that there for now.
No, you can continue. Actually, you are following my line of questioning.
Ooh,
You're,
that means we are in sync. Come on. Oh
you're
man, you gotta
literally,
love that right there. Come on.
you're literally just going with what I have. By the way, I'm taking notes. So now, as you were speaking, I'm like, okay, I need to ask him this. And now seeing that you are, tying it nicely and factoring it nicely into the question, I'm all for it. Go
I
ahead.
appreciate that. Means a lot. You know, when a pedagogical practitioner comments your ability to present a coherent thought, you're doing something right. So I do appreciate that because I am familiar with what you studied to get to where you are. I know how lit it is. So I consider that a very big compliment. So on that question, why another political party? Why so many? I recently had a function with the ambassador of Sweden, and I was joined by other political parties, some of them new, some of them traditional, ANC, DA, Rise and Zanzi, and then Move. We were there as well. Now, one of the questions that I got was, well, not really a question, it was a critique. Like, Dave, another party is not necessary. You're confusing voters. We have too many options to choose from. It is counterproductive. Why not just um, join an existing party, or if you're gonna start a party, why not just take all of the new parties and come together and collate your vote?
Yeah,
And my response to that has been that is a defeatist argument. And the reason why I refer to it as a defeatist argument is because with all of the existing options that we have, people are still not registering to vote. The last election, we had 26 million people who registered to vote. Of that amount, 18 million were eligible to vote. Of that 18 million, only 17 million voted, out of a population of 56 million, which really demonstrates that people simply do not believe in the existing options that have been made available to them.
sure.
Now, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, a lot of the young people who are signing up to vote and signing up to vote for Move are doing it because it is now their alternative. People who would not have voted now have a reason to vote, meaning that in the absence of Move, these individuals would not be going to vote. And if your argument is that it is confusing the voter, I challenge that, and I challenge that directly because if it is confusing the voter, why is it that it also brings more voters to the polls, more voters to the ballot box, and more young people who are willing to stand up and engage in the democratic project? And it's not to say that Oh, yes, go ahead.
So by, just to add substance to your argument, how many young people are we looking at that are showing interest so far? Because I'm asking this because I know there was a stat somewhere that showed that young people are not actively are not active in registering and even voting in the past elections. And so when you are now coming and saying, they now have shown interest in this new movement, is it safe for you to throw in numbers now or at a later stage?
So I will be throwing numbers at a later stage, but what I will say is I'll speak on a specific contextuality. Let me speak to this last Thursday. I was out and about and engaging young people, and about 30 of them uh, that I had spoken to just at that moment alone said, okay, well, Dave, we now have a reason to vote. The reason why I'm not throwing numbers out there is because we are constantly growing, and I want to make sure my figures are in line with what the actual reality reflects.
Yeah.
But I can definitely say it's a growing cohort, and it's always exciting to see. So if on a day 30 people alone, and that's not to mention all of the texts, the DMs, the emails, the responses on the website of young people who are saying the same thing, I think it is indicating that that number is growing, and we need to be active and intentional about making sure that the growth does not stagnate, that it grows and it increases, and that we reach more young people, and that even as a young person who might have been encouraged to sign up and to make sure that they vote next year, that you get out and you get other young people to do the same. We need to create a chain effect. We need to create the excitement, the propensity, the ability, as well as the understanding that our voices really do matter. So we need to stand up and make sure that they are heard.
Okay. That sounds like a tagline to your campaign. They, you'd have, I'm imagining this big billboard and this radio advertisement where you just go,
Come on
they.
now. Are you being prophetic? Come on, you're seeing the future right there. I like that. I like that a lot.
Um, Going back to my questions about the science of politics, yeah?
Yeah.
Um, I figured out as you were speaking that I don't know, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. At some point, you've had a conversation with yourself or an introspection before even running for presidency at the national level to say, do I meet the criteria? You must have had a criteria that you set out to say, yeah, in order for one to be a president, I would imagine they'd have to be this, this, this. This is the type of moral standards that they should at least live up to or subscribe to, whatever the case is. And I just want skills. I want us to talk in terms of skills, especially if you can give me 2 and 1, it's fine. 2 hard skills, 1 soft skill, or 2 soft skills, and what? It's fine. Just a mix. What do you think are the top 3 skills that a president of, let's put it in context, of South Africa, what skills should they have, especially 2024 going forward?
Right. I really appreciate that, and it is a really, really good question. Um,
Mhm.
I think I'll begin with the soft skills, and ooh, it's something I'm very passionate about. So I'll try not to take a 20-minute detour answering one question.
Sure.
In terms of soft skills, the first and I think the most important But also to a very large extent, the most obvious one is the skill of communication. And communication, I speak of in a very kind of broad stroke. Um, Reason being that communication involves the art of negotiation. It involves the art of mediation. It involves ensuring that you have a message that can reach people, but also a message that people can buy into. No one will want to follow someone whose message they don't agree with. When you get more people to buy into your message, you get more people who will be able to ensure that not only within their own space, but also the spaces that they occupy, that more people are willing to buy into a larger vision. So that would be the very first one. I think communication as a skill becomes very important. Now, the second soft skill, and I think I'll give two soft skills and two um, hard skills. So the second soft skill will definitely have to be emotional intelligence. I think that's a very important element to consider because the future of, in my view, South African politics is going to be very diverse politically speaking. I think that we're going to see a big shift in the percentages of parties that are represented. It means the ability to reach across the aisle, to understand other people from different walks of life. You don't need to disagree. You don't need to buy into someone else's viewpoint or policy parameters, but you do need to understand what informs their thinking, what informs their decision-making process, and how they got to the place where they are at as far as how they approach politics. The ability to communicate and the ability to demonstrate that emotional intelligence becomes very important. Now,
Sure.
in terms of hard skill, I think the first one is most definitely project management. And I speak about project management in a
Mm-hmm.
very bureaucratic um, manner. Uh, Reason being that bureaucracy is what allows a government to function. It is the administrative process. It is the slowly turning wheels that allow governance to take place. For example, a minister will make a decision. A deputy minister will be responsible for the implementation thereof, and the rollout will normally be carried by a director general. And this is all in line with the president's wider vision. Now, what you will notice is the director generals are normally absolute experts in their area of expertise, and this is normally some kind of project that they are overseeing that is related to the sector in which their department falls into. So, if it is the health sector, then they have a good level of experience in, for example, health sciences and managing projects in that capacity. If it is agricultural development, the same can be said. Uh, what we need is really to ensure that we can develop infrastructure in this country in order to stimulate the economy, in order to ensure that we can create the pool of individuals who are able to contribute towards the tax bracket in a progressive manner that allows more South Africans to have disposable income. Ensure the ability to develop and manage projects in order to stimulate the economy, stimulate employment, and combat youth unemployment in particular becomes very important. And that's why I speak about project management in that capacity. That's the first hard skill. The second the second hard skill, and this one I think might surprise quite a lot of people, but it is the ability to analyze, and particularly data analysis. Reason
Okay.
being that it is my view that those in a space of leadership must be able to perform as what I call a resource allocator. And a resource allocator is the individual that knows exactly how to redistribute knowledge as well as skills. So if you have a team, you need to know what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are and assign tasks accordingly. You cannot assume that you are the messiah with all of the answers and that you will do everything on your own. Now, the ability to analyze data in a very coherent and oftentimes a very quick way allows you to make informed decisions, but also allows you to take into greater consideration the risks of the decisions that you were taking, possible benefits, the outcomes, and the various kinds of solutions that can come forward. So in summary, the two soft skills that you would need is communication, emotional intelligence. The two hard skills that you would need, in my opinion, project management and data analysis.
Oh, thank you. I think you've answered that holistically. David, lastly, on the question of politics and science, right? Is when you're looking at South Africa currently, are we following is our system of governance? Is it following? I don't know if I make. Okay, no. Let me actually ask it the way I hear it in my head. You'll fix it. I trust you, David.
Come on now.
If I have to go through the dictionary to find the correct word, we're going to spend the entire night here. However, what I'm saying is, with the background knowledge you have of political sciences, right? Is our system of governance still following the science of politics? As a country, are we still following the logic of, politics? And perhaps enlighten me on that. Maybe I don't know what politics is. And then after that, I think I'm seeing questions here in the comment section. Once you've answered that, we'll go to the two questions that I'm seeing in the comment section.
Right, I appreciate that. And again, a very good question. And I need to problematize this question according to two areas, because it is actually two different questions that have been rolled into one. The first element is systemic. Second element is very much people-centric, and I'll distinguish between the two shortly. I'm a structuralist, or I identify as a post-structuralist in a political sense. If you look at the, I suppose, philosophical element, because of my belief system, you might argue against the notion of post-structuralism. Purely in a political lens, I do identify as a post-structuralist, which means the following, that so structuralists, and I'm overly simplifying, so like I am really overly simplifying this, but a structuralist is an individual. A structuralist is an individual who views the world according to structures, with the belief that the way the world operates, it operates according to structures. Within those structures, there is a hierarchy. Within that hierarchy, there are elites, and the elites determine the way the structure operates. This is how I view the world. So I look at everything in terms of structures, and you spoke about the system that we have, which is why I speak to structures, because systemic conversations speak to structural nuance. Now, the reason why I identify as a post-structuralist is because post-structuralism, post meaning after, so post-structuralists believe that yes, the structure exists, yes, the system exists, yes, the elites exist, but the elites in a structure can change. So whoever the elites are determines how the structure functions. The current conversation that the world is having about BRICS is a question about post-structuralism, in my opinion, because the question then becomes, will we have a new global elite that will come from the BRICS countries? And I'm a post-structuralist, and this is how I view the world. Now, your question about does the system of politics we have work? I believe that the system that we have is problematic because of the second element, the people-centric element. A system will always operate the way that it was designed to work. One of my great mentors once told me, a system is a system is a system is a system. That is why you may find an individual who is great. They have amazing ideas and amazing ideals, but when they are operating within a system, they have a very difficult time getting anything done because the system was designed to operate in a particular way. Now, with the system that we have, the governmental system that we have in South Africa, the design of the system is largely dependent on one's ability to carry out the mandate behind that system. And our system currently was a system that was rooted in the liberation movement. So we have inherited a system that was quite literally designed according to inequality. And from inequality, it went to liberation. Now, from liberation, we need to get to a point where we reach emancipation. And then with emancipation, I speak about empowerment. Now, empowerment cannot occur when those who are meant to be stewards and caretakers of the system still behave in either a mindset of inequality or a mindset of liberation. We are grateful for the liberation. It must always be acknowledged. In many spaces and areas, we are still in need of a liberation, but we also need to move with the understanding of a liberation towards empowerment. So the liberation is important towards getting us to a place where we are empowered. Now, to get to a place where we're empowered, we need people-centered leadership. And here I speak about what I refer to as the ideal of good governance. If you go and check out my website, our website, www.move-za.com, hard plug right there. You will notice that I speak about the ideal of good governance, which is the understanding that you don't need to reinvent the wheel, just do what must be done and do it well. It's as simple as that. Most of the portfolios I've held have been very successful, and it always surprises me in that I do not consider myself to have done anything extraordinary. I simply did the job that needed to be done. Pure, simple, straight to the point. And here I refer to the ideal of good governance. It is why I categorize your question into two elements, the systemic element and the people-centered element. And both of them are interlinked. So in order to get the systemic element correct, we need to get the people-centered element correct. Meaning that if we can get leadership that believes in good governance, then we can address a lot of the systemic issues that we have. And these are instances that will require generational attention. If you are in office for an 8-year term, it is not long enough to really get into the roots of a lot of the issues that we have. And one of the biggest problems is that dealing with systemic change oftentimes results in structural readjustment. And structural readjustment is not very popular because one cannot see structures being readjusted. And because there are no deliverable outcomes within the immediate effect, most of us in a space of leadership shy away from ensuring that this becomes the case. But we do need to get to a point where that is not only encouraged but also normalized. So in short, our system could be doing better because our leadership could be doing better. And this is one of the reasons why I'm excited about entering a space of politics.
Sure. David, you know, when I started this conversation, I had so many assumptions that you had a hammer. You were just hammering. You just hammered on all of my assumptions about you. I mean, I had a question in preparation for you, right? Where I said, you know, the society that we have become today is that of people who, and I stand to be corrected, but identify as failures, like self-proclaimed failures, you know, people who have given up. And this is why then I asked you the question on demographics. Who are the people that you are, you are ultimately looking to help? And but you have answered that well, properly, fine. But I still have questions that relates now to you that go back. Wait, okay. I'm no longer following my structure, but we'll get back to the questions. I had the questions in the comment section. Please remind me to answer those. I want to ask the question that is towards you. That is a David thing, right? And it's your It's your relationship with failure. When you are running when you are running to become president of a nation that has people who identify as failures, or people who struggle to come out of fail, or people who struggle to wear their failure and therefore soldier on. What is the one message, or maybe the one strategy you have towards restoring hope to people? What is it that you can say about failure, David? Perhaps when you say it in your voice, somebody will hear it and they'll figure it out.
I love the question. You are killing the game. One would think that you do this for a living. I've been privileged to be in many interviews, and I really like the critical nature of how you've outlined your question. So well done there. I wanted to say that outside of this platform, but I'll say it here. So thank you for that. Really good question. Right. So in order to understand failure, one must first understand what do we mean when we speak about success. Um, because what is the measuring stick? What is the yardstick? What is the standard that we are using to define what we mean by success? Um, I have a mentee that is about 48 years old, I believe. And when they approached me to mentor them, I was a little bit surprised. I said, well, there's quite a bit of a generational gap between us. I'd be more than happy to, but are you sure? Why me? Why now? Why this? And they went on to say, well, I wish I was half as successful as you are. My question to them was, okay, well, what do you mean by success? Do you measure success by money? Do you measure success by outcomes? Do you measure success by titles? Do you measure success by education? What do you mean by success? Because according to that measurement, many would argue that, I am not a millionaire. I don't have, I get some of the craziest DMs that be like, hey, oh, Dave, can you loan me like 20K, man? I just need to go. And I'm like, I don't have 20K on me, bro. It's not where I am at this stage. And many people would assume that, okay, well, since you're not balling right now, you are unsuccessful. The reciprocal is also true. I've been privileged to serve in various capacities. So many people would equate experience to success. You are very experienced, Dave, therefore you are successful. Some would equate it to education, and the list goes on. So I'll answer this as it relates to the 2024 election. Going into the election, this is how I define success. Success is getting representation in parliament. I said at the very beginning when we spoke about demographics that it is important that young people are represented. So when there's a space for young people to be represented, I consider that a success. Because my long-term ambition, yes, it is to work towards the presidency, but in the 2024 election, I do not define my success by ascending to the presidency. I define success by making sure that young people are represented within a parliamentary space, with the wider objective of ensuring that we have young people in power and that I work towards the presidency. Because as I did mention, it would be very proud of me, and proud in a very negative connotation, to assume that I alone carry the answer to all of South Africa's problems. I do not, and I do not assume that I do. But I want to remain as the vehicle through which young people can make their voices heard and say, well, hey, Dave, these are our thoughts, these are our concerns, these are our problems. Go forth and represent us. And I believe in do that and do that very, very well. Now, to answer the framing of your question, because I think there was a question, but I also think there is a deeper conceptual framework behind your question, which I really like, because your line of questioning today requires one to read between the lines. It is very evident that a great amount of thought has gone into it. Now, the conceptual framework behind your question is when we speak of success, what can be said, how do we define it, which is why I went on the different measurements of success. Now, what I would say about success is that success exists when the following occurs. Um, Motivation is great, but discipline will take you over the finish line when your motivation is lacking. I love to motivate people. I am grateful to travel a lot and speak to lots of people and speak to crowds and such. Um, but I'll go and I'll make you feel good for 30 minutes. And now, after you felt good for 30 minutes, you leave that beautiful venue and you go back home to a shack where you must pull out a candle and start studying. And the question then becomes, well, when you're hit with reality, what happens to that motivation? That motivation is no longer there. This is where the discipline becomes very, very important. When we get to a point where we can develop the habits and the discipline required to bring us beyond motivation, this is where we start to achieve success. So, in order to understand failure, understand what we define by success, because you will notice that what oftentimes we might classify as failure becomes an indication that we are moving towards our success. Um, if you are, well, I'll give an example. Um, I did sports. I was a world champion in a sport called the modern pentathlon. And with that particular sport, uh, I had failed a number of times. Although I had failed, each time that I had failed, I had learned the importance of training. I had this weird mentality where I just believed that if I can just run hard enough in this race and I can just
Mhm.
give it my all, then I will perform better. But that was not the case. I had realized that as hard as I would try, my races were won in the training. They were not won in the actual race themselves. So developing that discipline became very, very important because in these races I was motivated, but that motivation was not backed up by the discipline of weeks of preparation to get to where I needed to be. Don't get me wrong, I trained very hard. I trained
Sure.
3 times a day, but I also didn't have the discipline to know when to stop. I would always run races within a state of exhaustion. I would arrive at a race exhausted, just believing that, okay, either I would undertrain and I would overtrain. So understanding that there's a very delicate balance through that discipline becomes important. So in short, in order to speak about success, you must, pardon me, in order to speak about failure, you must know success. In order to know success, you must know what goes beyond motivation. And to know what goes beyond motivation, you must understand the importance of discipline. And I'm seeing some really fascinating comments here that I would love to speak to, but I hand over back to you because I speak a lot.
Yes, David, you speak a lot. I have met my match in my lifetime. Oh my goodness. So there's a question by Kariso Masemola. He is asking, okay, but let me put on my glasses. Hopefully I'll see. What is his research to... Can you see that question, David?
Let me scroll up. Yes, 2 questions. Hi, Kakiso. Thanks for the questions. What is my research topic and why, and what is the message to the pragmatist? Ooh, hot dog. I like those questions. With your permission, may I answer them?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Right. First, my research topic. So I'm doing the first year of my PhD, and I'm in my proposal writing phase. Now, my research topic is transitional justice in Africa, the policy development process of the African Union transitional justice policy. In short, I'm looking at why. A bit of a background. In order to get a PhD, you basically need to identify a gap and fill in that gap. So, in short, prove something that has never been proven before. That's the basic requirement for a PhD. And what I seek to
Oh,
prove is that there has never been a policy on transitional justice that has existed from an African context. And that is because African shared values were never considered in the policy development process of transitional justice. In a very brief summary, that is my research. And then my message to the pragmatist is as follows. I really love pragmatists because they are very practical in their thinking. Now, practically speaking, and I want to take this and link it to Lerato's point about what can be done to support um, what can be done to support essentially. So very quickly, I'm putting my website in the chat here. Please check out the website and click on the Get Involved button. where you can sign up. The more people we can sign up, the better. So my goal is to sign up at the very least 50,000 people. I'm on about 20,000, and I'll need an additional 30,000 in order to reach that goal, which will allow me to get 0.2% of the vote, which will then get me a seat into parliament. So in short, that's what can be done. And that has been my message to the pragmatists. Practically speaking, the question then becomes, well, how are you going to achieve anything that you mentioned and that you are outlining? The reason why I spoke about my defining success earlier as making sure young people are represented in a parliamentary space is because going into next year's election, it becomes very important to note that uh, the objective um, at this stage is to implement change. Now, the change that we're looking to implement is change at a legislative level. Our government has three branches: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature.
Yeah.
So my focus for the time being is on the process of legislation. It is why I spend a lot of time reading South Africa's laws, our bills, and everything of that sort, in order to have adequate oversight. As a member of parliament, I will have the ability to practice and exercise oversight over the executive, meaning over the cabinet. And this is where we can be very effective in terms of streamlining processes towards effective, good governance. I use that word very deliberately, towards effecting very good governance. And this would be my message to the pragmatists. Because the question then becomes, what can one seat in parliament do? One seat in parliament can do much when you understand the system, the structure, and I use that very deliberately. When you understand the way the structure works, you can use the structure to accomplish the goal. And the goal at this stage is to ensure good governance. And to ensure good governance, we need proper oversight. And to ensure that we receive proper oversight, we need to understand the legislative process of how parliament operates. And you can only do that as a member of parliament. And the best way to do that effectively is to actually represent the views of people, and in my case, young people, in a parliamentary space. And that would be my message to the pragmatists and my answer to the brilliant comment that Lerato has given. So again, please do check out www.move-za.com, click on the Get Involved button, and I'd be more than happy to engage you in the near future.
Yes. Okay. Although I figured I spent the entire time trying to figure out what a pragmatist is, but that's for me to go. I was crossing my fingers that this live would go on without me having to go through a dictionary. But here we are. You and your people, David. Do you see you and your people? Your kind of people. They
How do
bring
I
them.
know it's not your people?
Okay. I have. Do I have a comment first? Oh yes, yes, yes. Seeing that we're talking about young people a lot, and you've existed rather. You've done student leadership from. I take it you said grade 12. You were a prefect as well.
Right.
And then you went on to be SRC president at the university, right? What would, like, how do I always talk to people about, especially young people, I always talk to them about take part in student leadership, but I don't know how far I can go with backing myself up, like the physical evidence of what I'm trying to talk about. How can you best summarize the impact of being involved in student leadership on one's life?
Right. Another really good question. I think in this instance, context definitely matters. I was having a discussion with colleagues from, I believe it was either the US or Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And infrastructurally speaking, they have a lot more support because the living standard is quite different to that which we have in a regular African contextuality. So during COVID, we started the laptop project. We were negotiating with service providers, Vodacom, Telcom, MTN, to make sure students could at least have access to data, have access to laptops. And in many instances, we would get students data, we would get students laptops, and they lived in an area with no connectivity, or they lived in an area with very little electricity, or they lived in a shack where there's 10 people and no place where you can even connect this flipping laptop. Um,
Sure.
and that context becomes very, very important. So student politics in a South African context, I think, speaks to the lived experience of our education system. Our education system has a growing cohort of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, which unfortunately is currently the bulk of students in this country, meaning that in a South African context, our universities are a microcosm of wider society. So the issues that we find in institutions of higher learning are issues that we see in the broader society. Therefore, whenever you get involved in a space of student politics, what becomes very important is to recognize the role that context plays in the space that you are in, because you can lead, but if you lead without understanding the context, you will be a young person in a very nice blazer who gets very little done. But if you can get a grasp of why the context of what you're looking at matters, this is where I believe we can make very lasting changes. For example, I would sit and I would have consultations with, on an average day, upwards of 50 students per day. That was on a slow day. First person would come, Mr. President, I was raped last night. What do I do? Next person, Mr. President, I haven't eaten for 3 days. What can, I heard this a lot. What can must happen? I don't know why we say that, but what can must happen? Um, the next
What?
person will come.
It's actually what must can happen.
What must can happen? Thank you. What must can happen? Third person would come in. Mr. President, I slept in the toilet last night because my lease was cancelled because I couldn't pay fees and things of that nature. These are very real issues that people are dealing with. And the context that I was dealing with at the time was a person from a disadvantaged household living in South Africa. That was the context, and that context matters. And understanding that context meant that if you came to see me, yes, I do not have the powers of God, but I would do everything in my power to do what I can. Um, and I think that's very, very important as we deal with the reality of being a young person in this country. I agree with Lerato that the students' issues are very real and they are very many and they are very near and dear to my heart. And I still think about a lot of these instances today. But to answer your question, understand the context within which you operate. Because if you do, then you will understand why that context matters and how it can be applicable towards a different context.
Nice one. David, I think my cup has been filled, honestly. And hopefully this is not for selfish reasons, but I felt half of the time that you gave us a lecture on leadership 101, politics 101, and I would think life in general. It seems like at the age of 26, you've already figured out a lot of different things, and that's very commendable, but also I would say I've regained a little bit of confidence in the state of leadership in the country, to say it's not just about the ones we have a problem with, but it's also about the ones that are saying to us, we know, we understand the issues that you have. We have the background knowledge, and this is how we want to solve it for you. And I think you make a part of that, that kind of leadership that tries to package our issues nicely and implement change where it's needed. I'm wishing you the best on this journey of your 2024 elections. I'm hoping that whatever the outcome is, I would still want to see that smile.
I appreciate that. So what you're saying is that you will be congratulating me after we celebrate in 2024. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You like oversimplifying things, and that's not what I said. But I'm going to come back to this comment one day and say, let me update my comment. But thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I understand. I mean, in fact, let me show you a little secret. So at the beginning of the year, I had this little cue cards. Can you see them? And
right.
I wrote down the names of people that I would love to speak to on this platform, particularly for the year 2023, right? I even wrote preparation cards for Facebook Live interviews 2023. The first person there, can you see?
Oh my goodness. Oh my, wow. Ho ho.
Yeah.
Wow, well, that lights a fire in the belly. Oh goodness, appreciate that.
So when you said yes, let's do this, when I asked you, when I invited you, I was like, but what am I going to ask him? I mean, what did I want to ask David? I know he's running for presidency. I remember that. But what is it that I wanted to ask him? And now this conversation has answered every question that I had on this little piece of paper without you even being asked the questions. So
Wow.
I know preparation is very key in life. Be over prepared.
Better than being underprepared. Thank you so much.
All the best for your PhD as well, PhD studies. And
Thank you.
from wherever you are, because the last time you said you'd be outside the country. So I don't know if I should say have a good night or a good day, whichever one, David. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Likewise. Goodbye. Guys, I'm blown away. I don't know about you. So that is basically the live. It has come to the end. However, my aim is to have this conversation going on, to have young people coming up on the platform to talk about this thing that's happening next year in the country, which is elections. It's a very big part of us. We type so much on we type with our keyboards. We say we are tired, we need this, we need that, we need this kind of change. And it's very important for us to come now and maybe put our heads together as young people to really get to the solution. Let's get to the solution of the what's this? What a voter turnout rate? A small, is it a short voter turnout rate among young people? Let's get to that. Let's see how we maneuver around that. But also, aren't we just tired of manifestos? I'm tired of manifestos. I already anticipate the colors running around and all the choreography around the campaigning for elections. when in fact we should be having practical strategies to changing the circumstances that we find ourselves in. So yes, guys, you heard it from his mouth. 26-year-old David Kabwa, who is now a first-year PhD student in, I think he said political science. Guys, please. And former two-term SRC President of the University of Pretoria, now running for presidential candidacy in the 2024 election. That was my guest for tonight. Look out for more young people who are in leadership and perhaps who are actively involved in political, I want to say politics, right? Let's say politics. As we continue the conversation around the elections of 2024. In fact, if you're brave enough to challenge the session that we had today, go ahead, contact me. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's see if young people, especially the ones who are turning 18 and 16 now, let's see if they understand the importance of voting. Let's see if we can transfer that, especially using a social media, a platform that is so easily accessible to them. Because I don't think even with teaching them in a classroom setting or, they would still figure it out. But if we, from time to time, just, have this series of conversation, I think we might be enlightening one or two, and perhaps we'll see an increase in, youth involvement in terms of voting and registration. But for now, my lovely people, thank you for joining us for tonight. I've never spoken so much English in my life. I was even nervous. Well, I must say that if I have to evaluate, we didn't necessarily speak difficult English, but at the same time, it was difficult because everything I had to process it. I had to receive it Gasepedi, process it in English, and therefore respond to it in English. So it was a difficult process, me having to communicate, but we did it, we done it, and I enjoyed every bit and piece of it. Go ahead and have yourselves a lovely evening or a lovely day wherever you may be tuning in from. This was beautiful. This was wonderful. You got to know David Kabwa, and I got to tick off from my bucket list. Lerato, by the way, Lerato Manyadzi. Look who's on page. We did the interview. I found these cue cards and I did the interview with Lerato Manyadzi. Guys, please prepare. Like, write down your vision somewhere. And I'm leaving you on that note. Good night.